Hello Internet. Last night I ventured into a very specific subgenre of horror movies, the disembodied killer hand subgenre. I had to buy this 4-pack so I could get my hands on, no pun intended, The Hand, starring Michael Caine and directed and the screenplay adapted from a novel by Oliver Stone. It's Oliver Stone's second feature film, first for a studio. It's one of Michael Caine's notorious paycheck films, along with the likes of The Swarm and Jaws the Revenge. Oliver Stone doesn't like talking about it. It's from a very strange period in Michael Caine's career. So I'd seen it years and years ago as a child and remember being freaked out by it, but was fully expecting it to be trash because you've got an Oliver Stone film starring Michael Caine that no one talks about, and the score on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes is absolute crap, and the film has absolutely no right being as good as it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna go overboard and say that it's a masterpiece, but this film is for a film about a disembodied killer hand. This film's really good. To be honest, it's not running in a particularly full field. It doesn't have that much in the way of competition. Just off the top of my head and some notes I made, and now the screaming starts. Features a disembodied hand. There's a section in the Amicus portmanteau film Dr. Terror's House of Horrors that stars Christopher Lee that has a disembodied killer hand in it. There's a film called The Beast with Five Fingers, and most famous of all, The Evil Dead Part 2, which makes this list, even though it's not a film about a disembodied killer hand, but there's a certain scene in The Hand which is reminiscent of the scene in Evil Dead 2, and it highlights the faults with The Hand. We're going to talk briefly about the faults, and then I'm going to tell you why you need to dig out this movie and check it out. Okay, so Michael Caine plays a guy called John Lansdale, who's married with a small daughter, and he's a cartoonist. And right near the start of the film, he and his wife are involved in an automobile accident which results in his right hand getting lopped off and lost. And the hand reanimates and kills anyone that Michael Caine has repressed rage, anger and resentment towards. Or does it? Is it all in his head? That one's up to you. I know what I think. Come on. This is a film where Michael Caine's severed right hand kills people. Who doesn't want to watch that? That said, there's only so many things you can do with a killer hand. So it crawls along, it jumps up, it strangles people. Where is it? Is it going to pop out? And there are, I will admit, a couple of unintentionally funny moments in the film which no amount of skill or goodwill is going to plaster over. Towards the end of the film, Michael Caine battles with his hand, and you can't help but think about the scene where Bruce Campbell as Ash is fighting his possessed hand that he's chopped off himself. And I don't care how good an actor you are, if you're playing that kind of scene straight, I don't know any actor on the face of the planet that could really sell that. So I think Sam Raimi in Evil Dead 2 went the right way with the slapstick and the comedy, and that scene in Evil Dead 2 plays brilliantly. In The Hand, not so much. But that's okay, because there is so much to like about this movie and so much good stuff in this movie that, a little like when The Shark lands on the back of the orca at the end of Jaws, and it's by that point it's so obviously a rubber shark. I'm willing to forgive the rubber shark because you've had me up until that point. So in a similar way with the hand, when Michael Caine is fighting his hand, the movie had me way before then. So I'm willing to forgive it. Although if you snigger, that's understandable and in many ways forgivable. So let's talk about what's good. The acting. All of the actors in this film really sell it. And we're going to move up to talking about Michael Caine's performance at the end of this video, because I want to end on a high. But brief mention needs to go to the child playing the daughter. She's not in it very much, and sometimes child actors can ruin a movie. She's great in this movie, absolutely brilliant. As the second hand lead, I guess, the actress who plays Michael Caine's wife, Andrea Marcovicci, is superb in this. There are a couple of scenes between her and Michael Caine right at the start of the movie, and between the two of them, with the little dialogue that they've got, those two sell you the entire relationship between these two. It's genuinely wonderful acting, and what you know going straight in is that Michael Caine's character is not a nice man, and a lot of the things that happen from the start of the movie onwards, and even before the accident onwards, because she's making noises to move to New York, and you get that there's a strain in the marriage. Everything that happens from the start of the movie onwards is informed by what we can take to be true of their entire relationship up to this point. And all we know about it is what the actors tell us in the way they deliver their lines, the way they interact with one another, and she sells the backstory of this relationship completely, and the weight of that is all on her. Michael Caine's character, John Lansdale, is a character that's so obviously been in control and controlling of this relationship, and these are her first burgeoning steps towards a kind of independence and standing up for herself after years of being cowed. So the status quo is shifting for Michael Caine's character from the start of the movie onwards, and the accident just puts rocket fuel on it, and the horror that ensues, and it's a psychological thriller, is all about his world coming apart and his mental state coming apart. But none of that would work if she hadn't have sold you their entire backstory up until this point, and she does a superb job. As a geeky aside note, I gave a little cheer inside right at the end of the movie. An actress appears, Vivica Lindfors. She's got a tiny little scene in this movie. She does great with that, but if you watch this movie and you're any fan of horror, you will recognise her as, she's credited as Nurse X in Exorcist 3. She's the nurse that goes to Kinderman's house with the shears. Catatonics are so easy to possess. And when I saw her in this, I was like, oh, brilliant. I get to see her in another role. She's fantastic in this. She's amazing in Exorcist 3, and I'm going to do another video about the Exorcist franchise, but that's for another time. Before we get on to Michael Caine, the real strength of this movie, apart from Mr. Caine, and what I strongly suspect drew Oliver Stone to adapt the novel and to have interest in making this film, is this is a film about an abusive relationship. This is also a film about a man with an inner rage that we don't know where it's come from, but he's damped it down and pushed it down and down and down. And the course of events at the start of this movie and throughout the movie lead to this rage being unleashed. And if you've seen some of my other videos, I'm thinking off the top of my head The Babadook, which I mention a lot. See The Babadook, it's amazing. I love horror movies where, and I've said this before, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, where if you strip out the horror elements, you still have a solid story, and some of the psychological aspects and some of the are just filmed through a lens of supernatural and the horror, and this is exactly what this film is about. Loss of control, loss of masculinity, inner rage, and possibly rage against women. We don't really delve too much into this guy's mind, except that we know that there's something troubling and something wrong. We know right from the start he's a controlling man, and he's not a very nice man. And as a character study, it's fascinating, and you're sitting all the way throughout the movie thinking, if you're engaged with it like I was, well, has the hand reanimated? Is the hand killing people, or has he snapped? And we're seeing things through his eyes. Is it a projection of his, a sort of disassociation? Very similar to Norman Bates and Mother, if you will. There are some aspects of the psychology of this movie that reminded me quite a lot of Psycho. So, for a good portion of the movie, you're kind of waiting for the pressure cooker of Michael Caine to blow. And the absolute icing on the cake, the star on top of the Christmas tree of this movie, is Michael Caine himself. If Michael Caine had not been starring in this movie, it would have been a pile of shit. And even though Michael Caine self-confessed did this movie so that he could pay to have a garage built on the side of his house, he commits to this role. It reminds me in certain ways, one of the many reasons why I love Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. An awful lot of the material they had to deal with, especially in the later Hammer films, was kind of schlocky, and let's be honest, was beneath them. But they gave 100% every single time. They committed to the material, and they've become rightfully icons. Michael Caine's performance in this movie is off the fucking scale. Anyone who's seen any, especially of Michael Caine's earlier movies, know that he can tap into a rage, a personal rage. He's talked about this in interviews, and he can tap into this for parts, almost like turning on a light switch. And there are varying levels that he keeps this simmering away throughout the movie. Contained, just barely bubbling under, explosions, but at other times when he's with his daughter, although he's a horrible character, he's arguably an excellent father. The scenes with him and his daughter are wonderful. There's a scene after the crash where he breaks down in front of his wife and cries, and this is genuine. This is right there from Michael Caine. He's giving absolutely everything. And even though this is a schlocky B movie about a killer hand, I actually, now that I've seen this last night, this is one of my favourite performances of his. He knocks it out of the park. If you're at all interested in Michael Caine movies, let alone horror movies, and haven't seen this one, you really need to. This is an acting masterclass from the man, and he sells it, and he makes this movie. He makes it worth watching, because it's all in his eyes. It's all in his demeanour. Not even his dialogue. Just what he does throughout this movie is continually making you question, has he gone psycho and he's killing people, or is he really being haunted by this weird supernatural goings on? I don't know why Oliver Stone's ashamed of it. Maybe it's because it doesn't fit in with his resume moving forwards. Personally, and I know I'm speaking as a fan of the genre, I actually think that directors getting a grounding in relatively low budget horror movies or sci-fi movies or action movies, genre movies essentially, at the start of their career, to cut their teeth on, work with a larger crew, essentially prove that they can come in on budget and on time as well, which is going to get them later work, is actually a really excellent seedbed for talent. James Cameron springs to mind. His first big feature was Piranha 2, and Sam Raimi, Peter Jackson. I'm sure there are more and more and more and more. James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy, one of the most fated directors around at this time. I believe started with Roger Corman, and definitely previous to Guardians of the Galaxy made a little B movie called Slithers. Ultimately, without rambling too much, I don't think Oliver Stone should be ashamed of this movie. I think it's an excellent psychological study of a man with anger issues and the breakdown of a family unit. It's so much fun, and Michael Caine is just an absolute joy to behold. The ratings it gets on the aggregator sites and things like that, a crying shame, and possibly a crime. This one shouldn't be forgotten. We should reevaluate this. I'm so glad I got it now. I'm so glad I watched it last night. And this is one that's going to get played again and again, definitely. So if you haven't seen it, get your hands on it. Oh, it's so difficult not to do hand puns.